Okay, we're going to broadcast in a second, so now it's the other way around. And as soon as it starts broadcasting, and we're back. There we go. We're COMP305, and it's the winter 2016 session of Game Programming 1, and it's week 1, lesson 1, part 5. Part 5 of our broadcast. I do broadcasts and recording, so you'll see if you go on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, you'll see both the broadcast and the recording piece. The recording and the broadcast are identical. The broadcast is live on YouTube, and what I'm doing is sometimes it doesn't work, right? So I record at the same time just in case something fails. I have my recording as a backup, and I upload that anyway, right? So you'll have a cleaner, nicer video that you can look at later on in the recording. The broadcast is, well, you know, Tom, I can't make it to the second class, you know, or I want to look at this again, or you know what, I'm going to miss out on my test, but I still can do the class. I'm doing something else. You know, here it is live, right? So that's what this thing is all about. Again, it's just additional support for you guys, along with the other materials that I'm going to offer you this semester. So please don't use it as the only thing you do. That would be bad. And look, we just have so many issues. There's going to be problems in the class, things that I can't possibly answer you when you're live and remote that we're going to be doing today. Okay, so we're into our Unity piece right now. What I want you to do is we made this kind of jack-o'-lantern face for our player. We want to kind of get rid of it, so let's just shut down Blender. We're not going to save it. This is just us learning the interface. For next week, though, remember that I'm going to ask you questions about the interface. I'm going to ask you about the keys. How do you do this? How do you do that? That's going to be on the test. Now, it won't be all the things I'm testing you on because there would be too many questions. But there's going to be a selection of questions around, you know, shortcut keys for Blender, some stuff for Unity. Let's bring up Unity. And remember, when we start Unity 5, let me just close this down for a second, and I'll restart it. When we start Unity 5, and I'm hoping that most of you can get Unity 5. I know some of you will not be able to because you don't have access. That's okay. Unity 4 and Unity 5 is very similar. But I'm going to continue off of something I did last day, this COMP305, you know, and again, it's winter 2016 lesson 1. And I'm going to upload this to GitHub so you can get what I get, okay? So right now, this is where we sit. And if I was to go into Terminal right now and upload this thing, this would be bad. There is no automatic version control system for Unity, unfortunately. We have to do things manually or with some kind of tool, right? And again, there is the Github tool that you can download, right? So if you go to GitHub, or desktop.github.com and download there's a UI you can download to do to kind of connect with GitHub instead of doing it through command line. So when we do GitHub, there's a couple things we need. We need a repository, right, for those people who remember. So I'm going to go into my GitHub, and I'm going to hit Centennial College for a second, right? So you guys can be on the same page as me. That's why I'm doing this thing. So we can you can download my the stuff I'm going to give you right now. Okay, so here's my Centennial College, and I want to create a new repository that I'm going to call the exact same thing as my Unity stuff, right? My Unity is called COMP305 Week 2016 Lesson 1. Let's do that. So I want to say COMP305, you know, Winter 2016, right, Lesson 1. And that's what my repository is going to be called. Okay, cool. So I create my repository. There it is. And it gives me some directions on what to do here. Take a look. It says you can set it up on desktop if you have your desktop tool, or you can create a new repository on the command line. All right, so let's use the command line. I'm just going to pick my command line. For yours, it's going to be your command prompt. There's different ways of doing this. Here in the command prompt, I'm going to do this. I have to get to where my folder is for Unity. Now I know all my Unity stuff is on my desktop. I have it in a folder called Unity Projects. So let's do that. So I'm going to say CD desktop, right? And you'd have to kind of go there. And then inside there, I'm going to say CD Unity Projects, right? And then I got a bunch of Unity projects. I know what the one I want to go on is COMP305 Week 2016 Lesson 1. This is the long way to do it. Okay, watch. I'm going to show you shortcuts too. By the way, the same shortcuts work on Windows. So if I go CD and then I go to COMP305 and it's week or winter 2016 lesson 1, I'm there, right? And there's my files, assets, library, projects, and so on. That's cool, but that's a long way of getting there. Let's do the short way. How do I do the short way? Well, let's minimize everything here. And there's a problem too. If I do this while Unity is open, there's some files that'll be blocked. They'll be locked up. So the proper way to load stuff up on GitHub when you're working with somebody else, or even if I'm doing it, is shut down Unity, throw things up on GitHub, and then turn Unity back on, right? Because it'll unlock the files that are being used in the system. Okay? So things to note. So let me shut down Unity for a second. And I know where my files are. They're in this Unity projects folder right here. Take a look. There's my Unity projects folder, right? And inside my Unity projects folder, I have my file somewhere, right? So where it's called COMP305 as an example, the winter 2016. I got to find that file, and I can do that by, I sort it by date modified. So there's my file right here. And if I go into my terminal, and if you do this in command prompt, it works the same way. If I click CD space and then drag and drop my folder onto my terminal like this, whether it's on the Mac or Windows, you'll do this. So you don't have to worry about the exact path. Try it on Windows. So get your folder, and then open up your command prompt and go CD space, and then drag and drop your folder onto your command prompt. It'll work just like this. If I press enter now, I'm inside my folder, right, which is really cool. That saves us a lot of time, by the way. Instead of trying to figure out where it is, swimming around your operating system trying to figure out where it is, that's a pain in the ass. So now we're in here, and I want to initialize my repository. And if you notice, if I follow the instructions on GitHub, it tells me git init. That's one of the first things I want to do. I can also create a README file like this if I wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm just going to make this from here down. All right, so here's git init. So let's try that. I'm going to follow the instructions. Git init. Okay, cool. It does that. Git add. I don't want to add just a README file. I want to add everything. So I'm going to say git add, and if I put dot, it adds everything. That means everything in my folder gets added in, right? Okay, that's everything. Now I'm going to say git commit -m for message, and then initial commit. Okay, so this is just mirroring what it's saying here on GitHub, right? Now, what is a commit? And for some people who've used GitHub before, it's a snapshot. It's a name for the snapshot that I'm taking of my files, right? That's what it is. So I'm taking a snapshot of my files, and I'm saving them up on the cloud. That's what I want to do. First, I'm going to take a snapshot locally too. Okay, I press enter. So now it adds all those files into my snapshot. That's everything, all my assets, everything that I have. Notice there's a lot of files and some metadata that we don't see in the background. That's why I shut Unity down. Okay, cool. So that's one thing. The next thing is it says add a remote. I'm not going to type this in. I'm going to kind of copy and paste it. And you can do that with Windows as well. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my terminal. And in Windows, there's different ways to do it. You can right-click and on Windows and then paste it in. There it is. And press enter. Now that the remote, where my cloud is for my repo, is connected to my repo locally, right? Local repository, cloud repository. And I want to make that connection. How do I do that? Well, I want to push it for the first time. So I'm going to follow the next line. Git push -u origin master. So let's just copy that. If you're not clear on what to do, just copy these lines and it'll work just like this. But the only thing you have to change is this add readme. You can't just do an add readme. That's only going to add the readme file. You want everything. So you're going to have to do add dot. Okay, so if I put that in there, press enter, bam, it pushes it up. And it takes a bit of time to do. It's not too big. And now this one's only about 146K, so it's pretty small, this little project we're working on. Right? And if I refresh the scene, you can see that right now we have our assets, our library, and our project settings. And under assets, I have some materials, my prefabs. These are all meta files. There's really no folders here because there's nothing inside of them. And that's what Unity does. It kind of creates spaces, placeholders for everything. Inside my scenes folder, I have my main Unity scene and a meta tag for that as well. Okay, cool. So that's everything's up on Unity. So if you want to go download it, you can go up there and hit Centennial College or github.com/COMP305-W2016-lesson001. Click download, right? Download zip, and you'll have exactly what I have. Go ahead, try it. There's a problem for people who are using Unity 4, like on the machines in front of you. Won't work. Just letting you know. So when we do Unity 4, if you're using the school machine, right? If I upload something online, it won't work for you. You can download, you can use the textures, but you'd have to recreate the document. That's what you're going to have to do. So be patient. You won't be able to load up a scene from Unity 5 into Unity 4. It's not backwards compatible. The other way, it works. You can make it work. 5 to 4 will work. And that's why I wholeheartedly encourage you to have your own laptop or have a desktop computer that you can access through TeamViewer, some remote control system that you want to use. You can do that too. Or you can. It takes an extra step to download and include things from Unity 5 to Unity 4 by recreating your menu, your scene. Okay, so try it out. See if you can get it. You can get it going. Okay, I want to load up my scene. How do I do that with Unity? If I already have a scene that I want to load, and if it's not my own scene, I'm just going to minimize this so I can get back to it. Well, I want to pull up Unity. So I'm going to go to Unity where I have it, start it up, and I can simply put I'm going to ignore that I have it here already, and I'm going to click the Open button. This is what you would do, right? I'm going to click the Open button and navigate to what I want to open. So I want to open up this COMP305 Winter 2016 Lesson 1 and double click in there until I see the Assets Library Project Settings, and then press Open. What this is going to do is it's going to import all the assets and open it up in the exact scene that I had it in before. So you should see this if you grab my file. Go ahead. All right? If you're using Unity 4, you may not see what you see here. It may not even be able to load, right? But that's okay because it's not that much. It's not that complex. Sure. My GitHub link is this. github.com/Centennial College /COMP305. And you can search for it. If you go to Centennial College and you look down, you'll see all the different links. This is the way we're going to share information. So when I work on a file with you next week and I do some coding and you can't keep up, I'm going to put it up here. The code you can use, right? But you have to if you're using Unity 4, you have to translate it to Unity 4. There's slight differences between Unity 4 and Unity 5. Yes.
So how did you add the Unity, the assets folder?
How did I add the assets folder to the Unity? What do you mean? I don't understand. How did I open it?
Yeah, how you open the project?
So I went like this. I'll do it again. So I'm going to shut this Unity down, right? And I'm going to open up Unity for the first time after it closes. I'm using Unity 5, right? So here's Unity. It gives me this screen. I click Open, right? And then I have to navigate to where it is. So let's say if I know if it's COMP305 Winter 2016 Lesson 1, in here it has to show this. If there's another folder, dig one more level in. If you have to go one more level down, there will be, because you're going to show Winter 2016 Master, and you're going to have to go down one to get it, right? And then when you see this, you press Open. That's all you do, and then it'll open up into the scene that I told you to open. We need to do this because I'm going to be working with stuff, and you're going to say, I need to get it, and you're behind, and I'm going too fast, and you need to download what I just did, right? So there's two ways to do that to get what I'm doing. When I upload to GitHub, go on GitHub, take a look at what I did, and pull in the code or whatever I'm using, right? Or say, put up your hand and say, Tom, you're going too fast. Can you upload to GitHub, please, right? And I'll certainly do that. I'll stop for a second, shut down Unity, throw things up on GitHub, open up Unity again, and you'll be able to catch up, right? So you won't be too far behind. Right? But it's an important skill. This is just orientation for our course, right? You need to be able to load the stuff that I give you on GitHub and open it up on Unity, or else we're going to be very slow. It's locally? It's not recognizing your command? All right. So again, I would recommend the tool, desktop tool, desktop.github.com. Download the UI, and you'll have a UI that does it for you. Right? So again, for Windows users or even Mac users, remember that you don't have to use command line. Let's do one without command line. Okay, so I'll use the GitHub tool from the get-go. Right? So I want to create a repository, right? But I want to do it with the GitHub tool. Where do I get the GitHub tool? Desktop.github.com for your system. Right? It'll download a UI that has nothing to do with command line. Right? If you're command line phobic or it doesn't work, right? That's okay. You can download this from GitHub, and you're going to get the GitHub tool, right? That looks something like this. So if I open this up, I'm going to get a tool that I can see stuff. And what you can do with this GitHub tool, right, is I can point to the repository. Okay, that's what I can do with it. Right now, I want to create a new repository. If you notice, there's two ways to do it. I did it by command line. I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to click the plus in my Github tool. Notice how it says, what do I want to do? I can add a repository that's here already in my local path. I can create one, or I can clone one with the path online. So I can use my Github tool, my UI, to get my stuff from GitHub or add things to GitHub, right, without command line whatsoever. Right? So I would highly recommend, if you're not great at command line or it doesn't work, right, this is another path for you, right? So let's create a new one and a new repository on GitHub. So I'm going to call it, something else. So we'll call it COMP305, right? Winter 2016, and we'll call it test repo, which we'll kill afterwards, right? This is my test repo. I choose this and I create my repository. Cool, there it is, right? Now this is what it's going to look like up online, right? I don't have anything in my repository, but I'm going to publish it. So it's going to say, what is your name that you want? I want it to be called test repo. Okay, cool, right? And where is it going to go? I want it to go to Centennial College. That's my account. I have multiple accounts, right? What do I want it to be part of? I want it to go to the COMP305 team, because you guys are going to be part of teams eventually. I'm going to make you part of teams. Okay, now I'm going to publish the repository here. And what it does is it goes up on GitHub, and if I go back to here, right, into Centennial College, you'll notice that there's a COMP305 W2016 test repo that I just created with the command tool, with the GitHub tool, the UI, without nothing to do with command line, right? If I click in here and I want to delete it, I can go in there, and if I click settings on the repo itself, I can go down where it says delete. This is the danger zone, right? I can delete my repo. Once you delete your repo, it's gone. There's no way you can get it back, right? So I can delete this repository, and in order for me to delete it, I have to copy this name, the name of the repository right here, into the next line. So copy, paste, and now it makes this link active, and now it's gone. It's gone. Now my GitHub tool down here also knows, right? It should know that it's gone, yeah? Doesn't know. Doesn't know at all. It's not connected all the time. It's not synced up all the time. In order for me to get rid of it, I got to remove it, right? And then it's gone. So you can do things with the UI at the same way, almost exactly the same as you can do with your command line. So I'd ask you to test that out, and we're going to do more of that later on. All right, so you've got your link. You should be able to open this up now. Yeah? Who can't open this up, right? If you're using Unity 4, you might have trouble, right? But if you're not using Unity 4, you might be okay, right? I don't know. Can you using Unity 4 over there? Right. Now, I mean, I'm not officially we can't put it on the machines in front of you, but it's not like it hasn't happened, right? So I'm just saying, we can't load it up because we don't have an institutional license for it. But from a personal perspective, we're students, right? You can certainly download it and install it as a student on your personal laptop, right? Or your desktop at home, right? We just can't do it as an institution right now. Okay, cool. So let's get into this thing. I want my player object. Here's my player object, right? I mean, it's a pretty simple object, right? And I want to have it on top of some kind of plane. So how do I add a plane to the inspector? Remember, this is the same thing. I have my tools. There's different layouts. I'm going to test you on this one too, maybe a little bit on Unity. Take a look. In my layout, my default layout looks like this. We talked about this last time, right? So here's my default layout. And this is cool and all, but I really don't think this is a great way of seeing or working with Unity, for us, right? So again, I would change my default view, and you have to make it so it's comfortable for you. You can make your view look like whatever you like to make it comfortable. For me, the most comfortable view looks like something like this, right? Where I have my scene here, I have my game, and there's some other things I have up here as well. So here's my scene, right? And if I want to focus on my player, I've lost my player in my scene. I don't know where my object is. I want to left click here in my hierarchy on my player, and I want to press F, the F key, to frame select my player. Then it comes into view. So please do that. If you've lost your player, you don't know where he is, F to frame select and get him back. This is my player. My player is a cube, right? But it's been maligned. It's turned into some kind of weird box, right? We're going to get it back to what it looks like, a real cube, right? And how do I do that? Take a look at the inspector over here. Every object, game object in Unity has a transform component. All objects in Unity, like this object here, as an example, they have different components that make up the game object, right? So we have our transform, which is rotation, position, rotation, and scale, right? And we have a mesh, just like we did in Blender, which is a cube material, right? A cube geometry, sorry. And we have a collider. This is interesting. Think about a collider as an invisible box that goes around the mesh itself, right? Where we can collide with other objects. So right now it's a box collider, and I can edit it so you can see what it looks like. It actually takes the shape of the entire object itself, right? Okay, cool. We also have something called a mesh renderer, and you can make sure that it casts shadows or not, or receives shadows. Here's an example. If I turn this off, and I turn use light probes off, and I turn cast shadows off, right? The rendered scene is going to look a lot different when it comes to receiving and casting shadows, right? Typically, we leave these values on. Blend probes, we put blend probes on as an example, and we put cast shadows as on. Okay, those are the default values. Notice how we have a material. Hey, look, there's a material for the object, right? And it's default. The shader has nothing in there. I want to get rid of my player. How do I delete my player? Can I delete it here? Can I press the delete key in my scene? No. How about the delete key up here? No. How about right click and delete? That does it, right? Be careful. It's a little bit different here in Unity. So I'm going to right click delete. My player's gone. Want to get him back? Control Z. If you by accident you delete something, you can always get it back, right? If you Control Z enough times. To a point. Okay, let's get rid of it again and create my player from scratch. All right, so I got rid of it. I'm going to add a new 3D object, right? That I'm going to make it a cube, just like we did in Blender. Let's try and do the same thing we did in Blender, same kind of scene. So here's my cube. I can't model this. All I can do is stretch it and squash it. I can't do any kind of modeling with this thing, right? I'm going to rename this thing on the inspector. There's two ways. I can click and then click again to rename it here in the hierarchy. Or I can rename it here in the inspector and call it player. Basics, right? Okay, cool. Let's add a material. How do I do that? Well, there's a materials folder that I've given you, right? But right now, if I double click on it or click over here, it's empty. Remember what I said in Blender. Materials are objects, right? That I can add as a component to other game objects, right? So I right click here and I want to create a material. Here's my create a material, right? Let's try that again. I'm not doing it yet. So I'm in my materials folder. I'm going to right click in my materials folder and create material, right? When I do that, it gives me some other options, right? It allows me to create a new material, which I'm going to call red, or sorry, green, like we did in Blender. And notice how we have the type of shader as standard. I have albedo and metallic as properties of my material, right? But I want to change my my shader from standard to standard with specular setup. When I do that, I now have albedo and specular. That's very similar to Blender. If I click inside this area here, I get the color, right, that I want. And I can choose not a color wheel, but I can choose the color that I want it to be. I want to make this kind of, and this is the preview down here. You can see that it's a green color, right? Here we go. But how come my cube doesn't look green?
You should apply material.
I could, but how do I do that? I got my player and I've got my material. How do I add it in? Well, there's two ways. I can go add component, right? And I can choose, I can kind of swim down here to see if I can add a material. If I actually do a search here on my add component, I can kind of add, I can see if I can add a material, and it doesn't allow me to do that here. That's interesting. How about if I drag, like someone said, drag and drop? I can drag and drop it so that the material hovers over the add component and I get a plus sign. That's one way to do it. I could also drag it onto the scene itself, like this. That's the two ways to do it. So let's try this way. Let's just add it onto the component here. That's the way I like to do it. Because I have more control. Because otherwise I drag it onto the scene sometimes. I might get it, I might not. Right? So now if you notice, if I expand this, here's the same material, green, but applied to this shape. Remember I told you, think about the material as a separate object that's not connected to your game object. Every object in Blender that appears in your scene is a game object. Every single object. Lights, shapes, right? Sounds, everything is a game object in Blender. That's the good thing about it. Okay, cool. So we've got a material. And it's green. Let's add the other two pieces to it, right? Because we want to add our enemy. Let's see if you can do it. Add an enemy sphere and add in a ground plane, right? That's what I want you to call it, ground and enemy. Make it a plane and a sphere. And again, this would work in Unity 4, Unity 5, doesn't matter, right? Rename them as appropriate. I want the enemy to be red and the ground to be brown. Okay? See if you can figure it out. How do I do that? I'll do it while you do it. So first I'll add the plane. And I'm going to make the plane, I'm going to call this ground. And then I'm going to add a material to it. So I'm going to add a new material into the materials folder. Right? And I like to keep organized, so I kind of put all the material in the same place, right? Because that's kind of important. Here's my brown, and I'll change the albedo. I'll leave it a standard setup this time, and I'll change the albedo to kind of give me that brown color in the middle, more of a brownish color, more on the red scale side. There we go. And then once I've got the brown color, I'm going to apply it by clicking on my ground and dragging it over here. There's my ground that's brown. And I'm going to do the same thing with my shape. I'm going to add a sphere. Right, there's my sphere. It's inside here. Let's pull it up so you can see it. Here's my sphere. And my sphere, I'm going to rename as enemy. We've done this before, guys. Come on. And in my enemy, I'm going to, I want to add a material for here. So in my materials folder, right click. I'm going to create a new material. And I'm going to call this red. Right, you guys have done this before. And I'm going to change it to, again, the other setup. Doesn't really matter in this particular case. And I'm going to change it so that it's a red material, right, red, red, red. And my specular setup is kind of smooth. Eventually I can make it more metallic if I want to. I haven't applied it though, so I'm going to click my enemy and apply my red to the enemy. There it is. And I want to click on my objects so that they're on top of each other, but I can see them both in the scene. All right, and here's something. What do I see in the game scene itself? Well, this is what I see. How come I can't see the plane? Well, because my camera is below the plane. That's why I can't see it right now, the way I set it up. So, where's the camera? Well, here it is. Here's the camera, and here's the view that I get. I want to make it so I can see both. So I have a little preview here of what I want to see, and I can actually rotate my camera by clicking the appropriate button here, right? So it's Q, W, E for rotate in this particular case, and I can rotate across the x-axis so I can point down at the object itself. And here's a little preview that I get. And then when I look at my game, this is what I see. Right? So plane, cube, sphere. Who's got it? If you guys work fast like me, then you're done. By the way, I don't expect you to be done this fast, but because you're learning, right? So please do it. Don't watch. If you don't do this in Unity, whether it's Unity 4 or Unity 5, you won't be good at it, right? And when it comes to a test, you'll be too slow and you won't be able to finish. Okay? Okay, cool. So there's a couple things we've got here. I'm going to zoom in. Again, for zooming in, I'm going to press Control, and I want to use the scroll wheel to scroll in, right? I can do the same thing if I want to pan around the scene, right? As an example, I press the Alt key with the left mouse button, and I can pan around the scene like this, okay? If I press the Shift key and the Alt key, right? If I right-click, it does a different thing, right? So I can move the key around. So again, I'm using my left mouse button and the Option key or on the Mac or Alt key on Windows to pan around the scene, right? And you can also kind of move things up and down and around by different key combinations. Okay, cool. Great. So I've added in some stuff. As an example, here's my sphere and everything else. But when I render the scene, if I press the Go button up here, see this little play button? Take a look, guys. Play button. And if I press play, this is how we play the game. That just stays static like this, right? There's no movement. It's just a static scene, right? When I press the play button, if I press the play button again, it comes back to my creation view, my scene view, right? So play moves from the debugging mode, if you will, back into, you can toggle between debugging mode and creation mode, if you will. All right? Okay, so I want these objects to have gravity. So when I play, I want the sphere to fall on top of the cube and roll off of it. How do I do that? It might sound complex, but actually it's not. So here's my sphere. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. And notice on the right from my sphere, I have a sphere collider. The sphere collider wraps around the sphere. It's invisible to the scene. And we can use it, right, so that it connects or collides with other objects in the scene, namely this cube, right? But we have no motion because we don't have any physics attached to this object. And I can do that by simply adding a component. So if I click the sphere and add a component and click on physics, I can add in something called a rigid body. Right, here's my rigid body. My rigid body just added physics to my sphere. And if I press play, just by adding a rigid body, I press play, this is what happens. Boom. Let's try that again. So let's move it a little higher and then press play. And I just added a rigid body by adding add component physics, right? Rigid body, that's all I did, okay? To my sphere. So I press play and all of a sudden, bam. Right? Nothing, doesn't do anything. Let's do the same thing for my player. My player, I want to make it a rigid body too, so let's just click on my player, right? And add component, physics, rigid body. And now my player has the same thing as my cube, right? So here it is, blah, blah, and then play. So now my player falls, and so does my cube. Oh, and it even bounces a little bit, right? Okay, cool. Let's go into my scene, and I want to make my my camera come a little closer because it's pretty far away. So I click on my camera, and I want to rotate it around my scene, right, so I can see where it is, and you can see how far away it is. I want to make it so it's closer in. So again, I'm going to pull it along the z-axis. Remember, the z-axis in Unity is forward and back, and the y-axis is up and down. A little different than Blender, right? So now it's closer, and that's my preview down here. Click on the game and press play, and now I have a much closer view of my scene. Notice that the light that I'm getting is pretty good, right? Because it's directional light, and it's in my scene, and it's pointing at a particular place in my scene. So I've got a little bit of simulation physics going on already, right, in my scene with this cube falling on top. Well, this is the great thing about making enemies. And here's the beauty, and I'll stop with this for today, right? Here's my enemy. I want to make my enemy something called a prefab, right? So I've created my enemy. Let's say I've added script to him. I've added different components to the guy or the girl. She's my enemy, right? And there's different behavior that's added attached to the enemy or my object. And I want to duplicate it a bunch of times. How do I do that? Well, the first thing I do is I drag my enemy into my prefabs folder. So let's try this out. So drag my enemy into my prefabs folder. Now my enemy is a prefab and it glows blue. It's a different color than in the hierarchy, right? Okay, watch this. I can take from my prefab now back into the scene a bunch of times. Here we go. Let's add a bunch of enemies in there. But where are they all? Well, they're right on top of each other is what the answer is. So if I click this one, well, and if I zoom in to this enemy by pressing the F key, frame select mode, I can pull him out. Here he is, and there's the second one. And let's pull this one over here. And here's a third one. Let's pull this one over here. right? And I keep duplicating them, right? By duplicating this thing over and over again, right? By pressing the duplicate button. Take a look. I can make as many enemies, right, by duplicating them. And again, if you want to know the hotkey for duplicating, right, there's a hotkey for that as well. What do you think it is? Something like D, yeah. Like Alt D or Command D for the Mac, right? Something like that. And you can also do it from edit mode. If you go to edit and you want to know what the hotkeys are, it's on the Mac, it's Command D for duplicating, right? All right, so I've got all these ones there, and then I press play, and now look what I got. I got all these things falling all over the place, but they stop. Like drastically stop. They don't like bounce around. How come, right? Because they don't have any physics attached to them more than just falling physics. And that's a tale for another day. Right? We're going to get into how we make them bounce and how we make them move around and roll and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you can create a very quick simulation. Like it didn't take us long here, right, to make this happen, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to upload this to GitHub so you have what I have with all these enemies and the prefabs. It's probably have worked a little faster than you, right? So I'm going to file, save scene, right? And I'm also going to go file, save project, right? Which saves everything, the project, the view, everything that I have here. And then I'm going to go quit Unity. I'm going to go back into my terminal, right, where I was before. And I'm going to do the same commands I did last time, except for that connection command. So I'm going to clear the screen here for a second. So I'm going to say git add dot, which adds everything that I just added in. And then I'm going to add a new commit, a new name for the snapshot I just made. So I'm going to say git commit -m for message. What's the message for my commit? It's going to be added enemies. There we go. And then it attaches all those files to the that I added. And I'm going to say git, let's clear this up first so you can see it. Git push origin master. And what it's going to do is going to take my local files and throw them up onto GitHub. So now, if you look at GitHub, as we're finishing off, and if you refresh the scene here, which is on Centennial College, you can see that this is my COMP305 winter semester 2016 lesson 1. And if I go in there, under assets, now you see that there's other assets. You have materials for red, brown, and green. And you also have my prefabs, which I have an enemy prefab that I kind of created really quickly. And those kind of things. Questions? Same stuff we kind of did in Blender, we can do in Unity. The thing that's missing is how do I bring the stuff I do in Blender, the more complex stuff, how can I bring that into Unity? Right? And there's a way of doing that. You can export from Blender into Unity and bring it in just as is, and there's some tricks to that. We won't handle that now, but I want you to understand the interface. So what I'm going to be testing you next week on is the stuff that we talked about, the interfaces, the names of the things that we're talking about in Blender and in Unity. So what is, how do you add a new object in Blender? How do you select objects in Blender? How do you frame select? How do you focus in on an object in Unity? F. How do you, what is this, the hierarchy called in Blender? It's called the outliner, right? They're different things. From a orientation perspective, I could ask you this question. Unity is Y up, Blender is Z up, right? You should know these things, right? So those kind of things that we talked about today, right? If you watch the videos, right? Again, if you were going to go review the video really quickly, and you can watch them. The great thing is you can watch the video without my chatter and like 1.5 times speed, right? La, 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 la. It's going to go really, really quickly, and you can watch it and get all the piece parts that you need. Okay? I encourage you to fool around with Blender, actually play a little bit. Try and create something. Try and create a tower or a tree or something, right? And then try and do the same thing in Unity. Try and see if you can bring in or export. There's some really cool tutorials online for how to bring things in from Blender to Unity. Try and bring them in. Try and do it on your own without me asking you to do it. And one more thing before I depart with us for today. If you really want to get a head start, and I highly recommend you do so, but most of you will probably not do it because, I got to pull you to do it, right? And give marks around it or something. That's how it has to be, right? If you go to unity3d.com, like I said, and if you go to learn, right, there are some fantastic tutorials that you can go here, right? So if you go into tutorials, right, the one I want you to start with is the Rollerball tutorial. Start with this one, Rollerball, right? And then we're going to do, after that, we're going to do Space Shooter. All right, so these are the tutorials that we're going to use to learn with, right? So if I go Rollerball, right, it literally does a little view of how to do it. If I click on Intro to Rollerball, there's a video and everything else that you can watch, and it gives you a bunch of other things, a lot of information about the interface. So please don't wait around for me to show you. Bite into it, because when we get together next week, right, you'll always have, this is like your book more than anything else. This is where we're going to get a lot of our stuff. So if you read ahead, then it'll become more meaningful for you when we get together. Okay, so please don't wait for me to give it to you. Bite into it. Do the tutorials ahead of time. And that's it for me, guys. Next week, remember, day 1, quiz. In the beginning, 5 minutes.